My coworkers mocked me as a broke freeloader, and my girlfriend laughed. 10 minutes later I revealed the truth that silenced the entire company. A few months back, I sat across from my girlfriend Jade at our kitchen table and told her my company had downsized. Said I was laid off but had some savings and would bounce back soon. She smiled, held my hand, and told me it was fine. "We'll get through it together," she said, all supportive and calm. But it wasn't long before that sweet tone turned into eye rolls, sighs, and small jabs disguised as jokes. She started buying new dresses while complaining that I needed to figure things out. And I'd fix our leaky faucet, and she'd say things like, "At least you're being productive." Fast forward to tonight, the Belmont Grand Ballroom, one of those places that looks like money sweats out of the walls. Jade looked stunning. I'll give her that. She worked at a tech firm called Helix Dynamics. Big office, big egos, bigger gossip. I wasn't here for fun. I was here because she insisted. Said it would look good if she brought me. Like a prop, like an accessory that matched her dress. The night started fine. The waiters brought out appetizers that looked too fancy to pronounce. I kept to myself, sipping my drink, listening to executives brag about market expansion like it was a new religion. Jade was glowing among them, laughing, networking, shaking hands like a politician. Then John Wilson showed up. He was her coworker, tall, loud, and way too confident for a guy whose main skill was taking credit for other people's work and playing with Excel sheets. He had that used car salesman smile that made my skin crawl. "Hey, there's Jade's boyfriend," he said loud enough for the whole table to hear. The famous unemployed man of the year. People laughed. It wasn't mean at first, just awkward chuckles. But then John kept going. "Man, I got to say, Jade's been killing it here while you're at home taking it easy. She tells us she's basically carrying you these days." That one landed like a punch I didn't see coming. The table erupted. Even the CEO gave a small chuckle. Jade, my girlfriend, laughed the hardest, like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. I sat there smiling faintly, trying not to let my jaw clench too tight. Every laugh around me felt like nails scraping glass. I caught Jade's eye mid-laugh. She didn't even flinch, just kept that polished grin like she was performing for a crowd. "Hey man," John said, grinning. "What do you even do all day while Jade's out saving the company? Netflix, gaming, cooking lessons?" More laughter. Someone at another table actually turned around to see what the fun was about. I leaned back, keeping my posture relaxed. "You seem pretty obsessed with me, John. Should I be flattered or concerned?" He froze for half a second. That small moment where his brain tried to figure out if I'd just insulted him. Jade nudged my arm, whispering, "Marvin, don't start." "Start what?" I said, my tone light. He's the one fascinated by my daily routine. The laughter dipped for a second, but John wasn't done. "Come on, man. It's just a joke." "Yeah," I said, picking up my water glass. "That's what people say when they run out of intelligent things to say." A few heads turned. One guy smirked, clearly enjoying the shift. John laughed awkwardly, but I could see irritation flicker in his eyes. Jade didn't defend me. Not once. She just smiled, whispering something to the woman next to her like nothing happened. That was when it hit me. She wasn't embarrassed for me. She was embarrassed of me. Dinner dragged on forever. Promotions, bonuses, company shares, everyone flexing in their own polite way. Jade leaned into it all, nodding like she belonged. Meanwhile, I sat there, the supposed freeloader, the loser they all thought she was carrying. By dessert, I had memorized every smug face at that table. John bragging about his strategic leadership. The CEO pretending he cared about employee well-being. Jade talking about our plans like I was part of her PR script. Inside, I was boiling, but outside I was calm. I wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of seeing me crack. As the night wound down, I stood to stretch my legs. Jade barely noticed. John made another dumb joke about me being the designated trophy date. Laughter again. I smiled slow, deliberate, and looked around the table. "I hope you guys are enjoying this night," I said casually. "It's going to be one to remember." They didn't realize I meant it literally because in less than 10 minutes, every one of them, including Jade, would find out who the real loser was. John was still in full clown mode, waving his champagne glass like he just won Employee of the Year. "Come on, Marvin. Lighten up, man. We're just messing with you. No hard feelings, right?" He grinned wide, flashing teeth too white to be natural. "Must be nice, though, huh? Living the dream while Jade pays the bills. Not a bad setup." I kept my face neutral, letting him dig his own grave. The people around the table chuckled again. The kind of shallow laugh you hear from people desperate to fit in. Even Richard Larson, the CEO, gave a polite smile, pretending it wasn't awkward. Jade tried to play it off, tapping John's arm like she was embarrassed for him, not for me. "John, stop," she said in that fake gentle tone. "You're being mean." "Mean?" John laughed. "I'm complimenting you. Girl's got drive. Carrying her man in the company at the same time. That's impressive." That did it. I set my glass down carefully, making sure the sound of it hitting the table was loud enough to cut through the laughter. Everyone quieted just a little. Just enough. "Hey, Richard," I said calmly, looking straight at the CEO. He raised his eyebrows, surprised I was addressing him at all. "You're Richard Larson, right? CEO of Helix Dynamics." He nodded, confused. "That's right." "Good," I said, adjusting my tie slowly. "Because you might want to enjoy the rest of your night while you can." A few people exchanged glances. Jade frowned. "Marvin, what are you?" I didn't let her finish. "Enjoy the rest of your week, Richard," I said, keeping my tone casual, almost bored, because soon this loser will be signing your termination papers. The words hit like a gunshot. For a second, nobody breathed. Then silence fell, the kind that squeezes the air out of the room. Forks froze midair. Someone coughed. I could actually hear my own heartbeat under the chandeliers. Richard blinked, his glass still raised halfway to his lips. "I'm sorry. What did you just say?" I leaned forward, my voice low and even. "I said I own 90% of Helix Dynamics, so maybe laugh a little quieter next time." Jade's wine glass slipped out of her hand and shattered against the marble floor. Red wine spread across the tablecloth like blood, creeping toward her plate. The entire table stared at me like I just dropped a grenade in the middle of dinner. "Marvin," Jade stammered, her face pale. "That's not funny." "Good thing I wasn't joking," I said, straightening my jacket. The CEO's mouth opened, then closed again. You own?" I didn't bother answering. I just smiled and looked around the table at all the people who'd laughed at me minutes ago. "You all enjoy your evening," I said quietly. "You've had a good run." Then I turned and walked out. No yelling, no drama, just quiet footsteps and the sound of Jade calling my name behind me. I kept walking toward the exit, my reflection trailing me across the polished marble floor. That's when I tell you the truth. I never got laid off. There was no downsizing. The whole thing was a test. I wanted to see how Jade would treat me when she thought I had nothing. I wanted to know if she actually loved me or just the version of me that looked good on her arm, and she failed spectacularly. Back then, she told me she didn't care about money, that we were a team. But the moment she thought the paycheck stopped, I became a charity project, something to tolerate until something better came along. That fake story told me everything I needed to know, and tonight just confirmed it. "Marvin." Jade's voice echoed through the lobby, sharp and desperate. "What the hell was that? Are you insane?" I kept walking. "Not insane," I said without turning. "Just tired of pretending." She grabbed my arm, forcing me to face her. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Do you have any idea what you just did?" "Yeah," I said, meeting her eyes. "I stopped being your accessory." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The perfect, confident executive mask she wore was cracking right there in the middle of the hotel lobby. "You don't own Helix," she said finally, her voice shaking. "You can't. That's impossible." "Maybe," I said, stepping back. "But you'll find out tomorrow if I was bluffing." I turned away again, walking toward the revolving doors. I could feel her eyes burning into the back of my neck, trying to decide whether to chase or stay quiet. Behind me, I heard her mutter something like, "This isn't funny," before her voice faded into the chatter of hotel guests checking in. The valet attendant gave me a polite nod as I handed him my ticket. I stood outside. That's when I saw movement in the corner of my eye. John. He came jogging up, clearly uncomfortable, his hands stuffed in his pockets. "Hey, Marvin," he said, suddenly talking softer. "Man, I just wanted to say, I didn't agree with what Jade said in there. You know, I've always respected you." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? That's funny considering 5 minutes ago you were auditioning for stand-up comedy at my expense." He laughed nervously. "Yeah, that was just office banter. You know how it is." "Sure," I said, watching his expression. "Word of advice, though." "Yeah," he asked quickly. "You should start looking for new jobs." He blinked. "What?" I smirked. "You'll see." Then I got into my car and drove off. The city lights blurred in my rearview mirror. Inside that ballroom, people were still trying to process what just happened. But for me, the decision was already made. They thought I was some broke guy living off his girlfriend. Tomorrow, they'd find out I was the man signing their paychecks. The drive home was quiet, just street lights flickering across the windshield while my phone buzzed every few minutes. Jade's name lighting up again and again. I didn't answer. I wasn't angry anymore. Not the yelling kind, anyway. It was the calm kind, the kind that feels heavier than rage, like a storm before lightning hits. I'd suspected for a while that Jade was more in love with the lifestyle than me, the handbags, the company dinners, the way she said we when she meant me paying for everything. But I wanted to believe otherwise. I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd stick by me when the money didn't show up for a while. That's why I came up with the layoff story, to see what she'd do when the shine wore off. It took less than a month for the truth to slap me in the face. At first, she was all, "We'll figure it out together." Then, she started making comments about carrying the load. Next came the distant tone, the canceled date nights, and the not-so-subtle flirting with her ambitious coworkers. I told myself I was imagining it. I wasn't. Now, after what happened at the dinner, I had proof, not just of her attitude, but of how fake everyone around her was. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked smaller than I remembered. Inside, the air was still. Jade's heels were by the door. She must have taken a cab. Probably pacing around inside somewhere rehearsing excuses. I didn't bother calling out to her. I went straight to my office. My man cave, as she mockingly called it. She thought I spent all day in there wasting time on little tech projects. In reality, it was the only room where I didn't have to pretend. I locked the door behind me and sat down at the desk. On the wall, behind a shelf of old books, there was a small wooden panel. I reached up, pressed on the bottom corner, and it clicked open. A hidden compartment slid out, revealing a gray fireproof safe. My fingerprint opened it with a soft beep. Inside were years of work, contracts, merger agreements, and ownership documents, all stamped and signed. I pulled out a thick folder labeled Helix Holdings, and spread the papers across the desk. Each page told the same story. 15 years ago, I had merged my small tech company, Eclipse Innovations, with a struggling firm called Helix Dynamics. They were going bankrupt. I saved them on one condition. I'd own 90% of the company while letting their CEO, Richard Larson, keep his title. To the world, Richard was the man in charge. But in reality, he was just a figurehead. My name wasn't public. I'd used a blind trust to keep ownership quiet. Jade had no clue. None of them did. I ran my fingers across Richard's signature. The ink slightly faded but still clear. 15 years of silence, watching from the sidelines, collecting profits, letting the company run itself while I enjoyed my so-called retirement. I could have stayed that way forever if they hadn't pushed me. But tonight changed everything. My phone buzzed again. Jade, this time, Marvin, please call me. People are asking questions. What did you mean by what you said? This isn't funny. I can't believe you'd humiliate me like that. I put the phone face down. I opened my laptop and called Isaac, my lawyer and oldest friend. He picked up on the second ring, sounding half asleep. Marvin, it's 1 a.m. I need you to start a financial audit of Helix Dynamics, I said flatly. Everything, I said. Executive spending, vendor contracts, offshore accounts. I want preliminary findings on my desk by tomorrow, full audit by next week. Isaac exhaled. That's going to cause chaos. You know that, right? You've been silent for years. If you start digging now, it's going to make headlines inside the company. I don't care, I said, leaning back in my chair. It's time they remember who owns the place. He went quiet for a moment. What's this about, Marvin? Respect, I said. I've let people think I was some washed-up nobody for too long. Now they're going to see the truth, he sighed. All right, I'll start first thing in the morning. Good, I said and hung up. I leaned back, staring at the document spread across my desk. For years, I'd been the quiet guy in the background, happy to let others take the spotlight. But tonight, sitting there surrounded by proof of everything I built, something inside me clicked. I wasn't going to be silent anymore. I gathered the papers back into the folder and placed it neatly in the center of the desk. My reflection stared back from the polished surface, calm, sharp, steady. They wanted a loser. That line stuck in my head as I woke up the next morning. Except losers don't own multi-million-dollar companies, and they definitely don't spend their mornings dismantling corrupt CEOs before breakfast. Isaac called first thing. You're not going to believe the stuff I found, he said. It's a mess, Marvin. Fake travel expenses, inflated consulting fees, and contracts going to the CEO's buddies. It's like they built this company on nepotism. I grinned, sipping my coffee. Sounds about right. Keep digging. I want names, numbers, and dates. Everything. By noon, Isaac sent over a preliminary report, enough to cause panic, but nowhere near the full audit. I opened it and just stared for a minute. Millions burned through executive retreats, fake vendor deals, and so-called employee incentives that were basically vacation reimbursements. Richard Larson had turned Helix Dynamics into his personal ATM. The same guy who laughed at me last night was robbing his own company blind. I forwarded the report to the board of directors with one simple message. Full internal audit effective immediately. Within an hour, panic hit the building like a grenade. I got the first text from Jade before lunch. Do you know anything about this audit? Everyone's freaking out. Richard looks like he's about to have a meltdown. They said it came from the top. What's going on? I didn't reply. Let her sweat a little. By 2 p.m., Isaac called again. You might want to see this. Your boy John should get suspended. I almost laughed. For what? Conflict of interest, he said. Turns out he's been funneling company contracts to his cousin's construction business. It's all over internal memos. HR put him on administrative leave pending investigation based on the preliminary findings. Beautiful, I said, smirking. One down, plenty more to go. The best part, nobody really knew it was me. Sure, I dropped the bomb at dinner, told Richard to enjoy his last night as CEO, but most of them thought I was bluffing, a dramatic boyfriend trying to save face. So, when the audit hit the next morning, everyone assumed it came from some secret investor cleaning house. Employees whispered in break rooms. Executives deleted emails like their keyboards were on fire, and Richard tried to spin it as routine compliance. No one bought it. By late afternoon, Jade texted again. Marvin, please tell me you didn't do this. People are saying there's an anonymous shareholder behind all of it. If you had anything to do with this, you need to stop. You're ruining my reputation at work. That one made me laugh out loud. Her reputation. Not the company, not the employees, just her image. Classic Jade. I typed back one line. Tell Richard to enjoy his final week in that office. No emojis, no explanation. A few hours later, I got a message from Isaac again. The board's losing it. They've called for an emergency meeting this Friday. They want answers. Perfect, I said, let them wait for the answers in person. I shut my laptop and decided to stop by the Helix building myself. It had been years since I'd walked those halls, and honestly, I wanted to see the chaos up close. The lobby looked exactly the same. Polished marble floors, glass walls, and people moving fast to look busy. Only this time, I noticed the tension. Nobody was smiling. As I waited for the elevator, a familiar voice came from behind. Marvin, I turned. John. He looked rough, tie loosened, hair messy, eyes tired. Hey, man, he said, forcing a laugh. Crazy day, huh? You probably heard what's happening. I did, I said. Rough time to be handing out cousin contracts, huh? He winced. Look, man. It's not what it looks like. I didn't mean for any of that to blow up. You know how tight the job market is right now. I can't be losing my job. I have rent, insurance, bills, you know. Sure, I said, stepping closer. But maybe you can freeload off your girlfriend. Seems like it works for some people. His jaw clenched. He opened his mouth to respond, but I was already walking away. Behind me, he muttered something under his breath, but I didn't bother catching it. Upstairs, chaos had a smell. Burnt coffee and panic sweat. You could hear it, too. Muffled voices behind closed doors. Phones ringing nonstop. People whispering about the investor. I passed by Jade's office. She was inside pacing, phone in hand, looking like someone who just realized her kingdom was built on quicksand. She saw me through the glass. Our eyes met for half a second. She froze. I gave her a small nod, the kind that said, you'll get your answers soon enough. Then I turned and left. Outside, I texted Isaac one word, proceed. He replied, audit officially filed with the board. They'll have no choice but to meet. I looked up at the Helix Dynamics sign shining above the entrance. For years, they'd forgotten who kept the lights on. That was about to change. The next 48 hours were going to be loud, messy, and full of panic. And I was going to enjoy every second of it. Over the next few days, Isaac finished the full audit. Every dollar, every name, every scheme. By Friday, the evidence was stacked and ready. Friday came fast. The boardroom was waiting. Isaac met me outside Helix Dynamics headquarters, his briefcase in one hand, his expression unreadable. You're sure about this? He asked. Isaac, I said, buttoning my jacket. I've been sure for 15 years. The elevator doors opened and the quiet hum of the building hit us. When the elevator reached the top floor, the door slid open to reveal Richard Larson pacing by the reception desk, his face pale and sweaty. The man looked like he hadn't slept since Tuesday. "Marvin," he said, forcing a smile. "Wow, it's been a while. You didn't need to come all the way down here. We're handling the situation." I smirked. "Yeah, I'm sure you are." He shifted uncomfortably. "Listen, about that audit. We can discuss it informally. No need for all this board drama, right?" "Funny," I said, walking past him. "That's the same thing you said when you faked your last financial report." He froze, his jaw tightened. "What are you talking about?" "You'll find out in about 10 minutes, I said over my shoulder. The boardroom doors opened and the room went silent. 7 members sat around a polished mahogany table, faces tense, eyes darting between each other. Patricia Hensley, the only woman on the board, straightened her glasses and spoke first. "Mr. Morgan, I assume there's an explanation for this chaos." "There is," I said, taking the seat at the head of the table, Richard's old seat. "And you're about to hear it." Richard hovered awkwardly by the door. "Marvin, you can't just sit down," I said flatly. He sat. Isaac opened his briefcase and handed out thick folders. Each one landed on the table with a satisfying thud. "That's a summary of your company's last 5 years," I said. "You'll find some interesting reading. Unauthorized bonuses, fake invoices, contracts handed to family members, offshore transfers, and a complete disregard for ethics." One by one, they flipped through the pages, their faces changing from annoyance to disbelief. Patricia was the first to speak. "Is this accurate?" "Every number," I said. Richard slammed his hand on the table. "This is ridiculous. You can't come in here making accusations like this. Who even authorized this audit?" I leaned back. "The owner did." He blinked. "The what?" I folded my hands on the table. "Let me make it simple for everyone. 15 years ago, Helix Dynamics was going under. A small company called Eclipse Innovation stepped in and merged, keeping Helix alive. That company was mine. I kept ownership under a blind trust for privacy. The trust has always acted under my direction. It's the same entity that ordered this audit earlier in the week. This morning, I transferred the shares from the trust into my own name and executed a shareholder written consent reconstituting the board. It's already filed. That means every seat here answers to me now." You could have heard a pin drop. Patricia slowly lowered her folder. "You're saying you're the majority shareholder?" 90%, I said. "Give or take a few decimals." Richard's face went white. "That's impossible. You can't just..." "Actually," I interrupted, sliding a document across the table toward him. "I can." He picked it up with trembling hands. His signature was right there on the bottom line. Proof of the merger agreement he'd signed all those years ago. The room stayed silent. "Effective immediately," I said, "the reconstituted board, under my written consent, votes to remove Richard Larson as CEO. Security will escort him out once this meeting concludes." A low murmur rippled across the table. Richard jumped to his feet. "You can't fire me from my own company." I looked up at him, calm as ever. "Richard, you can't be fired from your own company, but this isn't yours." He stared at me, his jaw twitching, then turned to the board. "You're really going to let him do this?" Patricia folded her arms. "Mr. Morgan owns 90%. Legally, we can't stop him." Richard stood frozen for a long second, then grabbed his folder and stormed out. The door slammed behind him. I let the silence hang for a moment before speaking. "Now that we've handled that, we're making more changes. John Wilson's termination stands. His little side hustle with family contracts ends today." A few board members exchanged uneasy looks. I could tell half of them had their own skeletons buried somewhere. "Going forward," I continued, "we'll be promoting people based on performance, not connections. That starts with a new CEO." Patricia leaned forward. "Do you have someone in mind?" I smiled. "Yeah. Samantha Brooks, VP of Engineering." Patricia studied me for a moment, then nodded. "You have my vote." One by one, hands went up. The vote passed unanimously. Isaac closed his briefcase with a quiet snap. "Anything else?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, standing. "I asked Samantha to have HR start cleaning up. We're building something worth respecting again." As I walked toward the door, the board members whispered to each other, their voices low, uncertain, afraid. It was the same kind of fear that comes when you realize the quiet guy you ignored for years is now the one running the show. Either way, I didn't stop because the man she once called a loser just took back his throne. By the time I got home, the lights were already on. Jade was pacing in the living room like a storm trapped in a cage. Heels still on, hair messy, eyes red. The moment the door clicked shut behind me, she spun around like she'd been waiting to attack. "You humiliated me," she yelled. "Do you even understand what you did to me today?" I dropped my keys on the counter, calm as ever. "Hi to you, too. Don't start with that smug attitude," she snapped. "Everyone at work is talking about me. They're saying I didn't even know who my own boyfriend was." "Well," I said, loosening my tie. "That's not far from the truth, is it?" She froze, eyes narrowing. "Don't twist this around. You lied to me, Marvin. You let me believe you were broke. You made me look like a fool in front of everyone I work with." I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. "You look like a fool because you acted like one. I just gave you the stage." Her voice cracked. "You planned this?" "I planned to see who you really were," I said. "The rest? That was just you being yourself." She blinked, shaking her head like she couldn't process it. "This is insane. You think humiliating me in front of my colleagues proves something?" "It proves everything," I said flatly. "Because when they mocked me, you laughed. Not out of shock or nerves. You genuinely laughed. It was harmless office humor." She fired back, her voice rising again. "You don't understand how things work at events like that. I couldn't make a scene." "Oh, right," I said smirking. "Wouldn't want to ruin the image. Better to let them call your boyfriend a loser while you giggle next to them." She stared at me, breathing hard, her hands clenched at her sides. "You blindsided me, Marvin. You could have told me the truth." "I could have," I said, stepping closer. "But then you wouldn't have shown me how little respect you had left." Her voice softened, desperate. "I didn't mean it like that. I thought you were going through something and trying to cope with humor. I didn't know." "Stop." My tone dropped firm and cold. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You liked being the successful one for once. You liked telling people you were carrying me. John didn't make that up. That came from you." She looked away, guilt flickering in her eyes. "That was a joke taken out of context." "Context?" I repeated, laughing under my breath. "You mean you talked trash about me behind my back, and now you're embarrassed it blew up in your face?" Her voice cracked again. "You don't get it. You made me the office joke. They're calling me the girlfriend who didn't know she was dating the boss." I shrugged. "Well, now you know how it feels to be the punchline." That hit her. She went quiet, tears starting to form. For a moment, I almost felt bad. Almost. But then I remembered every fake smile she'd given me. Every sigh when I mentioned looking for new work. Every time she treated me like a burden instead of a partner. "You remember when I told you my company downsized?" I said. "How I said I got laid off." She nodded slowly, eyes wet. "I lied," I said simply. Her eyes widened. "What?" "I never lost my job," I continued. "I wanted to see if you'd still respect me if you thought I had nothing. If you'd treat me the same way you did when you thought I was some big deal." She stared at me speechless, the realization sinking in. "So, that was all a test?" She whispered. "Yep," I said, no emotion in my tone. "And you failed it spectacularly." Her lip trembled. "Marvin, I didn't." "You did," I interrupted. "You treated me like I was less than you. You mocked me to your coworkers, stood by while they laughed, and acted like I should be grateful for your company. That's not love, Jade. That's ego." She stepped closer, crying now. I was scared. "Okay. I thought maybe you'd lost your drive, that you were just giving up. I didn't mean to hurt you." "Funny," I said quietly. "Because you didn't hesitate when you had the chance." Her tears spilled over. "Please, Marvin. I can fix this. I'll talk to everyone. I'll explain." "Explain what?" I asked. "That you laughed at your own boyfriend for being broke, but now you want him back because he's rich." Her face broke completely. Then the kind of breakdown that comes when reality finally catches up. I stepped past her, walking toward the stairs. She reached for my arm, but I pulled away. "Marvin, please," she begged. "Don't do this." I turned halfway, looking at her one last time. "Jade, I've spent years letting you see what you wanted to see. The quiet guy, the pushover, the one who never argued back. That guy doesn't exist anymore." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying pack your things," I said. "You're done here." She blinked, stunned. "You're kicking me out." "You wanted independence," I said coldly calm. "Now you've got it." Her voice broke into a sob. "Marvin, please. I love you." "No," I cut in. "You love the story you built about me. The real thing was too much work." She sank to her knees, crying, but I didn't stop. I walked upstairs, the sound of her sobs echoing faintly behind me. In the hallway, I looked back once. The woman who thought she owned the world now crumbling in the ruins of her own pride. I shut the bedroom door, sat down on the edge of the bed, and exhaled. For the first time in years, the house felt quiet, not empty, but peaceful. I'd spent long enough being invisible. Now she could fade instead. 3 months later, Helix Dynamics didn't look anything like the place it used to be. The office that once ran on fake smiles and corporate gossip was now alive with energy. People actually looked proud to be there. Samantha Brooks had officially stepped in as CEO. The same Samantha who used to get talked over in meetings by guys like John and ignored by Jade at every company party. She'd been the only one who ever did the work without bragging about it. And now she finally had the title to match. Back then, Jade imploded. Word spread fast the day Samantha was announced, and by noon that day she'd turned in her resignation. Word spread fast through the company that her old rival, the same woman she once mocked for not dressing the part, was now her boss. I didn't see it firsthand, but Isaac told me Jade lost it when she found out. Threw a full meltdown in the hallway, saying things like, "She's not even qualified, and this is a joke." By noon, she turned in her resignation letter. No one begged her to stay. When Isaac called to tell me, I didn't react. I just said, "Not surprised," and went back to my work. I didn't need to gloat. Her downfall spoke for itself. Instead, I focused on fixing what was broken. Under Samantha's direction, Helix went through a complete transformation. The company started holding open meetings, giving employees a voice. Promotions were based on performance, not who you knew. The bloated executive perks were gone, replaced by real investment in the people who actually did the work. Contracts that used to be hidden under shady consulting fees were open for review. Richard Larson's personal expense accounts were shut down. The board was cleaned out. 3 members quietly retired after realizing the audit trail pointed straight to them. Samantha earned respect fast. She ran things the way I always hoped someone would. The company numbers reflected it, too. Within 2 months, the trend had turned positive. Bookings were climbing and client trust had doubled. The media caught wind of the mysterious restructuring that turned Helix Dynamics around, but I kept my name out of the spotlight. I didn't need interviews or applause. I already had what I wanted, respect. One afternoon, Samantha stopped by my office. "You know," she said, leaning on the doorframe. "You could have taken the CEO spot yourself." I smiled. I already had my time in the spotlight. Besides, I'd rather build something worth leaving behind. She grinned. "Well, consider it built." When she left, I sat there for a while thinking about how far things had come. The same people who once whispered about the unemployed boyfriend now worked for me directly or indirectly. Life had a funny way of correcting things when you stopped playing small. A few months later, Helix hosted its annual corporate gala. Same place, the Belmont Grand Ballroom. The last time I'd stood under those chandeliers, they'd been laughing at me. Tonight, they were clapping for me. The room looked different now. Or maybe I did. The laughter wasn't cruel anymore. It was genuine. The applause wasn't forced. It carried weight. People I'd never met came up to shake my hand, thanking me for saving the company, for bringing integrity back. Samantha took the stage in a simple black suit, confident, steady, no nonsense. "Tonight," she said into the mic, "we celebrate not just success, but second chances, and there's one person we owe that to." She turned toward me. "Please welcome Marvin Morgan." For a second, the sound of applause filled the room, loud, sincere, almost deafening. I stood, adjusting my jacket, and walked to the stage. Samantha stepped aside, smiling. I looked out over the crowd, recognizing faces that used to snicker at me. None of them dared now. And then I saw her, Jade. She was sitting in the back row with a small group from her new company, which had been invited as a partner firm this year. The only reason she was even in the room, she wasn't dressed like she used to be. Her eyes met mine for a second, and for the first time, she didn't look angry or defensive. She just looked regretful. I didn't stare long. I turned back to the mic. Somewhere in the back of the room, Jade quietly looked down at her hands. And for the first time since all of this began, I didn't feel anger. I just felt done. I'd risen. And that was enough.